May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Kook Archive podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Kook Archives and Kook Audio, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have part 2 of the phone chat with Peter van der Sterre. And Peter and I really got carried away. We talked 3.5 hours. So last week it was like, 2 hours and 15 minutes. I don't know. It was less. Maybe it was an hour and a half. And this week, it's about an hour. I cut a lot out. I got carried away, which I tend to do. But anyway, it's pretty neat. So here we go again with Peter van der Sterre, who's got the, the Oak Street Zendo in San Francisco and the 7th Street Zendo in Boise, Idaho. And those are oakstreetzendo.org is the website. And, if you want to know more about him, you can hear the first one if you haven't heard it, He first came to Sokoji and heard Suzuki give a talk long ago, and then came back later and was a student and had a lot of interesting adventures along the way. And so here we go.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to, whenever Mel's, book the how should I say, the next thing after The Path Unfolding, which I thought was a great little thing that Sue Moon did, basically an interview. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll be interested in catching up with whatever Mel has to report on.
He was working on 2 books.
Okay.
And at the end of his life. And, he was talking to me about them. One was his light edits of a group of Suzuki lectures. And the other was more autobiographical and very frank opinions about, things like Richard Baker, who he was never a fan of. And,
well, it is amazing to me that you've been able to maintain a connection and a kind of a positive take, on Richard, because, his cruelty at various stages of the game were staggering to me anyway. And I had to at one point say to him, I really have no affection for you. And he just, he handled it, but I never felt any particular investment. Now, maybe I don't feel much of an investment in a sense from Norman, which is to say, whether I come or go, I don't think he's going to lose any sleep over. But I do feel very clearly a sense of responsibility. In other words, I feel like Norman has done a yeoman job of providing, entree and possibility and inclusion in every day, and the kind of whatever was his creation, I always felt, supported and included. Whereas with Richard, I just felt like I was part of the, I happened to be a passenger on the bus that he was driving, and it was quite a ride. And all things considered, I benefited in many ways, and we all did. So
yeah,
good for that.
Yeah, and and he's kept on and created other possibilities for people that will continue. The Mel's books, there's deals for both of them with Counterpoint Press. So I just had to cut out a bunch of stuff we were talking about. But at this point, I ask him what he thinks about climate change.
Yeah, well, we've had how should I say, environmental collapses of greater magnitude in eons past. And the Earth has been warmer than it is now by a good measure in ages past.
Yeah.
Whether, the humans will survive the oncoming changes, there's an interesting question. But, that's
that's a very positive view, what you've got.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's optimistic. You're an optimist. Part
of your job, David, is to be optimistic. Not dumb. Not dumb. It's just that, people need that. People need us to see the possibilities, not among other things. It is, it's easy. No, it's not easy. I think it's harder to not be optimistic. There's just more weight involved.
Yeah. Well, Noam Chomsky said, big social change, political change, it comes about through mass movements. It's not led by strong people and politicians. And we really need a strong mass movement to turn things around. We'll see what will happen. But there's stuff in play now that is different from anything that happened in the prior extinctions, and so it's going much faster.
Oh yeah,
our essence is it can't be killed. It's unborn. It's undying.
Yeah.
We always want to preserve and help and do our best and we want to reduce suffering. We want as little harm as possible. We want to do our best. So I'm in favor of any activity that helps keep the human race going and reduces suffering. Of course.
Yeah. Well, you do. So, well done.
Ha.
Well done.
I do nothing.
You do. You're interested in this stuff, and you're sharing this interest and appreciation with a hell of a lot of people. And I prefer the local approach, but I applaud people that are creating avenues of interest or energy or inspiration.
Yeah.
I could take somebody like Peter Coyote, and I think, well, he does the podcast or whatever, and hundreds of people listen and appreciate this, that, or the other. And I'm more interested in a conversation that I will have with 24 people over the next several years.
Yeah.
That interests me more. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
There's no sense in my being critical.
Yeah.
And those impulses, those are things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in my self-limiting behavior. And I'm amazed that, in fact, sitting beyond our every device massages these areas and gives us latitude to expand our appreciation.
Yeah. Something I do on the local level is I go to poetry slams.
I can't imagine what living in these, in these multiple worlds is like. Even though, San Francisco is, everything under the sun is here, but they are, as you might well remember and imagine, they're all up to stuff. We have overwhelming washes of young people and money and transformation of the cityscape and incredible suffering on the streets. The homeless and and the addictions are running rampant. I mean, I used to go to Glide. I spent some time singing there at a period of time. So going down Eddy Street, through the Tenderloin, you see people on the street, but they seem to be like sort of out there, strutting their stuff or doing whatever they're doing. Now, they're tense. They're, people unconscious, sprawled in their debris, and every form of. You've seen The Wire?
Yeah. Yeah, well, absolutely.
Not so different, except maybe even more depressing in the sense that the suffering is more palpable.
Yeah.
Than even the Amsterdam or whatever they used to call that place where they rounded up all the folks and said, "This is free zone. You can do whatever you want to here."
Yeah, that was a great idea.
As long as you don't kill each other, we're going to leave you alone.
Yeah.
So, I've always been very interested in, the black community, and grew up in Chicago and felt a lot of interest and
You grew up in Chicago?
Yeah, South Side.
You grew up in the South Side of Chicago?
Yeah.
Well, good Lord.
Yeah.
I asked you where were you born. You said San Francisco. You didn't. Then it was New Mexico. How long were you in Chicago?
We moved there when I was less than a year old. My folks moved to Chicago. My dad got a job running a paint factory there, and so they spent the next 20 years, or maybe something like that, in Chicago. But they kept saying, "Well, Chicago's okay, but it's no San Francisco." Well, that's no attitude. There's plenty of great things about Chicago.
Yeah. But wait, you said you were on the South Side?
Yeah. Not in the ghetto.
Yeah.
Very big dichotomy. They put up these expressways to define the territory. But in the years that I was in the process of leaving, I left for school when I was 18, obviously. And by the time I had graduated in 4 years, my neighborhood, my folks had already left and moved to South Dakota. And my neighborhood changed from pretty nice residential, working class mix to all black. Pretty much in those days, they had a lot of rampant fear and blockbusters and redlining and all the things that contribute to urban chaos and controversy. Just the beginnings of it. My old neighborhood is a place called Roseland, and is now known as Triggertown. So it goes.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Harvard.
Harvard? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you're a Harvard guy. My God. Well, no wonder your Dick ordained you.
Well, I didn't think he was impressed with that kind of stuff. But he didn't graduate, so he took it too seriously, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he's an old dropout. He got out of the draft like a lot of us did by playing a role that made them feel he was unfit.
Well, I got the Navy to declare me psychologically unsuitable, but I was at Navy OCS.
Oh, really? Wow. Was that a plan you had?
No, that was a spontaneous reaction to being in the wrong place and realizing that I was not at all concerned about the consequences. I mean, they could well have imprisoned me, but I wasn't concerned about that. I just was clear I was not going to be going to Vietnam anytime soon.
Yeah.
And fortunately, if I'd been drafted out of a draft board on the South Side with a lot of the black guys that became cannon fodder in Vietnam, nobody would have listened to me for a minute. But because I was at Navy OCS in Newport, Rhode Island, I happened to have a Navy shrink who decided that there was no point in the Navy ruining my life if I was so impassioned about this thing. I probably am not suitable. So that was a nice resolution.
I got a letter from a recently retired Army psychiatrist saying that we set him up. We set him up. I knew this gay guy who hung out on the hate, picking up homeless boys who'd walk by. I'd go visit him and sit and talk. And he said, "Oh, I can." He helped me hatch a plan to get a letter from his friend. Was a family friend, and he said, that guy knows that I'm, total homosexual. There wasn't the word gay then. So I'll send him to you. I'll send you to him and say that you and I are very close, and just go over there and don't say much. I'm a little confused or something. Yeah, but the guy gave me a letter saying I was a schizophrenic, homosexual. So one other thing. Oh, yeah, a drug addict. With leadership qualities, and by no means should I be allowed in military service. That was great. Huh. Well, Harvard, what'd you major in?
Economics.
Really? My.
I was influenced by my uncle. Is my mother's sister, my mother's brother, who was this big political mover and shaker, and he spent half of his time in Washington D.C. and half of his time in Seattle. And I thought, well, he works on big, interesting problems. His deal was public and private water power. So I think that's what I'd like to do, not knowing anything. And so, you got to. No, you don't have to, but it's a simple. In the context I was in, I had to say I was going to be studying something or other, so that was that. But I didn't realize until I got out of school that I was really much more interested in literature than I was in economics.
Well, you don't need to go to school to be into literature, though.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's just a late bloomer. And after I was declared psychologically unsuitable, I realized that my brilliant career was definitely going to be having some adjustments. And I was well on my way to, 4 years of travel and basically living in communities.
What'd you do first there?
And after I got out of school?
Yeah.
Oh, I went to work in a motorcycle shop in Allston, Mass. And from there, I think we came then to San Francisco, and I lived in San Francisco for a year. And
wait, you said we. Were you with Mimi?
No. I was traveling with some people from Cambridge. These are people I knew from school.
Yeah.
So I think 4 or 5 of us came out, or maybe 6 of us came out to California more or less at the same time. I came out in a Econoline van, 144 cubic inch van, very well used, and we were towing 3 motorcycles. So that was an adventure, and then we got here, and the truck caught fire in Pinhole, but we made it somehow.
Wow. Was that 68?
That's right. And then I lived in the Mission District for a year, and then I and some of the same folks went to South Dakota, where my parents had just bought a place in the Black Hills, and we joined them and worked on the place, and I spent the winter there winterizing it.
Did your Harvard education help you with your lifetime of construction work?
I don't think I mentioned my degree to anybody in the construction world very often. Sometimes a client would be interested in my background, and then I would confess. But no, the thing that made construction possible is I had the great good fortune of early on. I don't come from the trades, so I didn't grow up like Ken,
right?
With a familiarity and a saturation in a lot of things that you really need to know in terms of skills, not just in building, but in lots of things. And so interestingly enough, when Mimi and I were starting a family, a young lady showed up at our door. I think she was 14 years old, and she wanted to know if we could use a babysitter. She lived in the neighborhood. Her parents were hippies. She more or less raised her brothers and sisters, her sister and brothers, and also babysitted for us on the side.
Yeah.
So this woman, eventually, I hired her to be my office manager, and she worked with me for 25 years.
My. That's interesting.
A great person, a true bodhisattva. And she was just one of these Irish, inherently smart, totally capable, able to roll with anything, gifted, handling, excited or cranky people. And so that she handled so much of what was necessary to be handled because, construction on any scale at all is a paperwork intensive business. And so I was free to do what I needed to do to get more work.
That's great. Are you doing any construction now?
I consult only, and only because the only consulting I'm doing is for the Dolphin Club. And I've been swimming there for 35 years or more, and the place has about 75 or more years of deferred maintenance. So we're planning on, renovating all the infrastructure and putting some foundations under part of the building and upgrading the systems, life safety, elevator, climate control, functioning galley, all those things that make it, good for another 150 years.
Did you run into any of the friends of any other people you knew there? Like Reb used to?
Oh yeah, Reb used to be, but he never was what I would call a real committed member.
Yeah. What about
in the same that people relate to Zen Center? Some people just want to be hanging around the edges, and some people are willing to get right into it.
Right.
I wasn't interested in the politics or the board or anything, but I was interested in basically the family way. It took me a decade to realize that just going there and swimming is only part of what's happening. And that there's a culture of people that like to row and swim and hang out and swap stories and who knows what, go sailing together or rowing or whatever people do on the water. And so getting to know some of these people has been, a real comfort. I went to a memorial service yesterday for a guy that probably had been there, been around in the community for 50 years, a former San Francisco cop who, among his other attributes, the one story he told me that really impressed me was he was in the Bayview, and during all his time as a police, he never once fired his weapon.
That's
kind of
good.
Police.
That's good. Wow. Diane has a cousin who became a Santa Rosa policeman.
Oh, yeah.
And he's killed 2 people there. And they traumatized the heck out of him. Both times he was forced, by one guy was stabbing him in the face with a screwdriver. It was no need to. It was just, it's a guy who didn't want to pay his bill at a service station. And the other guy was coming at him, and another cop with something and wouldn't stop, But what impressed me about that is it wasn't like in the movies or on TV. I mean, he was greatly affected by it, and he gets time off, and after the second one, he just moved to a desk.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm doing a little bit of these days is spending time at San Quentin.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's a revelation. Admittedly a very select group. The Buddha Dharma Sangha that Lee DeBarros started 20 years ago still continues.
Wonderful.
And meeting some of these people you would never imagine. I mean, they're violent offenders. I'm sure they all have some history there, but it's not accidental. But the level of interest and attention and sincerity they're the most engaged audience, if you want to call them just an audience, that I speak to. And, I occasionally have talks about Suzuki or whatever there. And it's just really an extraordinary thing to get to know some of these folks.
I went there once. There was a woman named, it was a long time ago. She was
Francine Bushilowski.
That's right. She took me in there. And you know what was interesting? We went in with her Volkswagen, and she went in to an office to go through security and came back, and we drove the Volkswagen, and we could have brought machine guns in there.
Right. But getting through the gate into the actual lockup, you've got to go through a two-way gate. Yeah. At least the way we go. And you've got to be walking in. You got to hold up your driver's license. And then you lock the outer gate behind you before they release the inner gate so you can go through. They have plenty of time to check you out.
Yeah. Lou Richmond and I went with her once. And, I thought these guys, there's no bullshit there. They are sincerely interested in, they're not interested in dabbling. They have very, very difficult lives here. And they were, and I've heard it from other people who work with people in prison, is the level of sincerity is hard to match.
Well, the thing that for me is so striking is the temperament of some of them. I mean, you would just not, it just wouldn't occur to you meeting these people in a different context, anything about their history. I mean, some of them seem so literally demure or unassuming or intelligent. And it's just, it's just another example of the world's turned upside down.
Yeah.
I mean, we know so little about each other in some ways. We're, so busy making big assumptions and reinforcing those assumptions that it's amazing that we can do anything.
Yeah. That's what Huey Newton talked about in how it's reinforced. Once the teachers get it in mind you're a bad boy, it's just like they already know it before you go into the class. And,
I've talked to some of my more conservative friends, and one of the initial responses, or maybe real strong assumptions, is, whoever you're talking about, I'm sure they really deserve to be there. This is just a bedrock position.
Right.
And I'm not trying to second guess the system or make any claims other than my experience of these folks as people is striking and enlivening. I feel always grateful for having had the opportunity just to spend a little time talking with them.
Yeah. Well, I read George Bernard Shaw's The Crime of Imprisonment when I was in high school, or around when I graduated from high school. And when I met Jerry Brown at Tassajara when he came in 1975, he was governor-elect, I gave him two books. I gave him Small is Beautiful and I gave him Kind and Usual Punishment by Jessica Mitford. It's about, the prison system in California, and especially about the indeterminate sentences and determinate sentences and stuff. To me, nobody should be in prison who's not dangerous. There's a lot of people in prison for drugs, and, I knew a big black guy. They got 10 years for having sex with a 15-year-old. And she testified that she seduced him, and it didn't help him.
Right.
And he went to San Quentin.
Yeah.
And he was a harmless person.
Yeah.
But and I'm against Trump going to prison or anything. Everybody always wants to throw everybody in jail. I think he could be cleaning highways or something,
Yeah, I think trash collection would be good.
Yeah, trash collection. I don't think he's ever going. I don't think they're ever going to get him. I've been watching for. It's like a decade now of they're just about to get him. Huh?
Yeah, I say the Teflon Don.
Oh yeah. Well, it's big shots. It's really hard to get big shots in America. They have the same problem with the mafia dons.
Right.
But he's a unique case.
You ever to Tony Klein?
I knew Tony Klein. Yeah, he just retired recently from 42 years on the bench. What about him?
One of my buddies inside, one of the more articulate and interesting of them, knows Tony Klein by name because he is the person been more proactively involved in trying to push against the tide of longer sentences, which, of course, the Prison Guard Association has been advocating all along.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah, and that's, I remember talking to Tony when he was Brown's legal. He was Brown's legal guy for both terms or something.
Brown,
and he,
sure.
he had an old history of being a left-wing lawyer, and he'd realized that a lot of people should be in prison there, and that was a big thing in the Brown administration was, building more prisons, not building more prisons,
Right.
But it's tough. And, I talked to Brown about it in Oakland, about the war on drugs and how hopeless it was. He said, well, we got guys out here with, Uzi selling drugs on the corner. We got to do something about them.
Yeah.
It's
a tough one.
Yeah. Mm.
But we'll be able to, I don't know if it's going to see any improvement, but we'll see we'll see the story unfold as it continues to, It didn't surprise me that Newsom voted down the injection site deal.
The what?
A safe injection site are one of the latest things in San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
Too many people are dying of fentanyl overdoses.
Yeah.
So we want to give them opportunities to be in a clean setting where we can monitor the kind of stuff that they're injecting. So maybe it won't kill them, or if they do start to OD, then we can apply the appropriate remedy so that they at least won't die.
Yeah.
And everybody that's studied it says this is probably a positive.
Yeah.
Newsom might be the next Democratic presidential nominee.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know of anybody more likely, but I don't spend a lot of time studying the question.
Yeah, I don't either, but it seems to me what little I know And I avoid news as much as I can. I avoid American news. I avoid news in general, but the only news we watch here is occasional Al Jazeera, which is really good world news. But it seems to me that he might be a good candidate for the Democrats to run.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty good. And the Democrats right now seem like they got a little bit of some wind on their back, at their back, because of the overreach of the anti-abortion movement, and the fact that there's so many yahoos that the Republicans split up that it looks like we might beat more than a few of them, at least for the Senate.
Yeah, for the Senate. I checked 538, Nate Silva's statistical site.
I've never gotten into that.
Oh, I just look at everything statistically after the last I saw, but I don't look at it much because I don't like to think about that stuff. It doesn't help anything. So maybe 2 months ago, or maybe a month ago, I looked at his site, and they were giving the Democrats 52% chance of having of 52. It was somewhere around 52% chance of having 52 senators, but it might have. But so that's good. They were giving them a 17% chance of keeping the House.
Yeah. I don't know, but there is the wild card of just the craziness of overriding.
One second. Our housekeeper wants to say something to me. Ja, you're doing too, Madi. Ja, terima kasih. Saya lupa bilang Anda. Okay. Yeah. I'm back.
What language is that?
Indonesian.
Okay.
She wanted to pay the gardener, and she said, "Is this money for the gardener?" And I said, "Yes." I apologize for not telling her before I came up here. I'm on the second floor.
Okay.
Anyway, the whole place will come crumbling to the ground without her.
That's good.
She's wonderful. I love the people here. God. I don't care, Muslim, Hindu, anything. Anyway, well, people don't understand statistics. They'll say, Nate Silver was wrong. He said, but they don't do it with his sports statistics. He says teams that have a 17% chance to win a game, according to everything we know and can put in, they win 17% of the time. And so the statistical approach is not, it's pointing out its odds, So they gave Hillary Clinton, I think, a 73% chance of beating Trump. But,
not that day.
Yeah, well, it was really they said there's all these factors. It seemed like everything that they could have underestimated was. But he said there was only one factor by itself that threw it to Trump, and that was the FBI guy, his, having the press conference 2 weeks before the election, saying that they were going to, what's his name? Comey. The head of the FBI then.
Yeah.
Saying they were going to reopen investigation into Hillary Clinton. They found another server or something. That lost her 3 points. That lost her 3 points right there. And anyway, but 17% chance there.
Yeah.
That happens. It's at basketball games, you'll go in. And horse races, you'll see 60-1 odds against horse win. But it only happens, he said, about 1 out of 60 times. And he says, would you get on a plane that had a 17% chance of crashing?
When I was in grammar school, I ran across a book. I think it was grammar school. Might have been junior high, whatever. But the title was How to Lie with Statistics.
Uh-huh.
So it pointed out a few of the rather frequent and consistent dodges that various folks, including, just regular newspapers, depending on their points of view, of course, employ all the time to make the points that they want to make. So
yeah, well, that's the misuse of statistics. But, they say you can prove anything with statistics. It's easier to prove anything without statistics.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. Poor people, it's so easy to confuse and mislead people. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how gullible so many people are. And it's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I remember from Suzuki that really strikes me is he talks about people who don't practice, and he says, without knowing it, what they do comes out of fear.
Mm.
And then he goes on to say, and something will be lost for them.
Well, he experienced his whole country going totally crazy, but
yes, he did.
It wasn't like everybody believed everything. It's just a culture where you don't
question it.
You don't disagree with the
or whatever
with how the flow, how things are going, what those above you say or do. Anyway, well, look, Peter, I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, it's great. I too, I'd like to stay in touch, of course, and I'll write you whenever I have a thought or a question that might be either interesting or you'll be helpful with. I did read the Padua book.
No kidding. What did you think of that? Oh, he's talking about David Padua's book he came out with earlier this year, The Tetralemma. And he said Ron Ash wrote it, but he didn't keep it secret who he was. It's sort of strange. But anyway, it's a very interesting book. And we talk about him in a little bit here.
Yeah, it's a nice story. It's a nice adventure tale. And actually, I also, it's not what I would call Pilgrim's Progress. He's interested in all this stuff, and he gets around and has marvelous connections and, talks to the high lamas and does wonderful things. But actually, the story, when I compare the way I feel after reading that book and the way I feel after reading Suzuki, just a very different kind of thing.
Yeah.
There is a headiness and a
no kidding.
A kind of a I guess I don't know how to, in a sense, do justice to my feeling because it doesn't fully formed thoughts at all. But there's something missing, or there's no lightness, and there's not much humor. It's just kind of an adventure story, and what a wild life he's led. More power to him.
Yeah.
And his generosity must be quite substantial. And, there's a little bit of envious, he got lots of women, and I'm happy for him and happy for that.
He was extremely helpful in Zen Center buying Tassajara. Richard Baker took Suzuki to the East Coast and to meet people, to try to raise money for Tassajara. And we had a $45,000 payment coming up 3 months. That's, December, January, February, March. Right. 3 months after our $20,000 or $22,000 down payment. Right. And so he took Carlson to the East Coast. He took Padua to the East Coast. And Padua had been involved with a company you probably read about that sold out Xerox, and he was close with Chester Carlson, who was a philanthropist, the inventor of Xerox, and who was a very good person, really interested in Buddhism and in, he was sort of a very quiet philanthropist. Well, David Padua facilitated Dick Baker and Suzuki going to meet Chester Carlson, who was the major donor for buying Tassajara. And he gave some himself. But he's a little tighter with money. Maybe he didn't have the enormous amount Carlson had, but he seems to have plenty. He's donated to. Listen, I never ever expected David to donate anything to Cuke Archives, but he has. Nothing big, but I know him. I drove him from Boulder to Gary Snyder's house once, and I tend to visit with him when I'm there.
He's in New York, or is he in Colorado?
He's in Santa Fe.
Oh, he's now in Santa Fe, huh?
Yeah, he was in Boulder when they had this recombinant DNA, Genentech type thing lab. He took me through it. It was like, you had to go through an airlock with stainless steel floor and ceiling with holes in them that, blew air through and everything. You had to get sort of purified before you went in. And there were all these guys in their lab coats and Petri dishes. And I think they developed something, I just remembered, that was made a type of carrot that was sweeter than usual, and he sold it to McDonald's for $30 million or something like that. That's an old memory. But, he's a brilliant guy.
This is like agribusiness on steroids.
Yeah. He's a brilliant guy. And he hung out.
This is part of Padua's scene.
This is Padua I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
And he hangs out with people at the Santa Fe Institute, which is chaos theory physics, and I don't even pretend. I'm not even interested in understanding. I wouldn't even begin to try to understand any of the things he's into. And his son visited me here, and I said, when I'm with your father, I listen. That's because I know, and we get along really well. But I'm not like that, man. I don't even want to understand anything anymore. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's too much to understand, and I had a lifetime of understanding some things, and now I'm just happy. Like Katrinka says, I'm into the chop wood, carry water phase.
Yeah. Well, I was reading the newsletter from Bill Kwong's place today.
Yeah.
And they've got a quote from Suzuki that speaks to that. which is, Padua has made a fortune and created a life using, this rather extraordinarily incisive intelligence and a kind of creativity and chutzpah that has rewarded him, and he has spread some of that bounty. And he is a patron. This is a well-known role and a creator. And this is the American dream personified, and it's quite terrific. I went and visited with Paul Disco last week.
Very cool.
That scene of his in Oakland, you've seen it, I imagine.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable, and everywhere you turn, there's another manifestation of his insatiable kind of creativity and energy. His body is a complete wreck, He now uses a walker with wheels and brakes and such, but as recently as last year, getting around that compound, he would be pushing a grocery cart. His explanation was he'd rather be mistaken for a homeless person than a crippled person.
I got to call Paul. I talk to him periodically. And I've put it up. I just last night at midnight, and I like to be asleep by 11. At midnight, I finally sent in all the files for the audiobook for Thank You and Okay, and it's just months of work. And there's other things I have to do. I mean, it's endless, but I have a period now. I want to finish Tassajara Stories, a book I've been working on for years. But I don't want to start back into it until October. And one of the things on my list is to call Paul and have a nice long talk with him. We do that periodically.
You know who I'm reading, who I really like? Joko Beck.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I hear that a lot. People really liked her.
Well, have you read any of her stuff?
No.
Okay. Every Day Zen.
Yeah.
It's the book. And then her daughter she's passed, but her daughter collected a bunch of her other talks called Ordinary Wonder. Mm-hmm. They're both just, outstanding. It's interesting to me. I believe, she was one of the real foundational students of Maizumi.
Yeah.
And although Maizumi, kind of blew up the situation that he created to some degree, a lot of his descendants, like the folks up at Great Vow, are fantastic teachers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I don't understand, but it doesn't look to me like, the Dharmadhatu lineage, and the only thing I get is secondhand on Tensho through Rick Levine, doesn't sound very good.
Yeah. Yeah, they're having trouble. A lot of good people in that, though.
I'm sure they're great. Just that, lineage, man, is what I'm thinking. How do you create and sustain a culture? Is really the question. But I'm not trying to be dismissive of all the stuff I know nothing about.
Yeah. There's so much. It's so fancy, and there's so much to believe, and there's all this like guru worship, and investing so much in who the guru is. So they crash heavy when the guru crashes, and so I say, well, what did he do? And they can't tell me anything. I said, well, that's not as bad as his father.
Well, that's true, but for whatever reason, I mean, it just seems like Trungpa was able to transcend a lot of the damage he created. I mean, you don't hear too much about the suffering. that he created.
Yeah.
And, the fact that, Suzuki was quite content to give him excellent props despite everything else. But then on the other hand, after, my own whatever devotion or appreciation of the 12-step world, one other way of saying is that, he lived and died like any other drunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's ridiculous because it in no way describes what all was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. He was the absolute worst type of alcoholic. And, but I called him an alcoholic and crooked cucumber, and they said, hey, you're not a doctor. You can't diagnose him. I said, all right, I'll change it. So I changed it to heavy drinker, and they were very pleased. But, he couldn't stop. Nobody could stop him. He was devoted. You know what he was like? He was like Nicolas Cage in that movie,
Leaving Las Vegas.
Yes. That was a great movie. I saw it with Elin, and she hated it. But
I probably would too.
It was just, you haven't seen it?
No, I think I saw it, but it just didn't stay with me.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing, what stays with me and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I'll say, I've said it, and I think I kind of believe it. I don't know if it's actually true, but I remember almost nothing that Richard said.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's just very interesting. Whereas things that, I've read in Suzuki are, they're just with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different, I'm convinced it's a very different aesthetic. It's a very different view of the world. It's a very different kind of activity.
Oh, yeah. So Peter and I talked about a bunch of stuff, and that I just cut out. But he said something about running into Kelly, my oldest son, that I thought would be neat to include.
I run into him. He recognized me before I recognized him. It was great. I've always had great contact with him. Always,
that's good.
He's a gas. He's really great fun. When he was like 5 or 6, we went to the airport to pick up somebody or other, and we're talking, and this guy next to us looks at us like, what's going on here? Because he was so clued in, and he was, you could just say, talk about anything, and he's right there. He's, keep up with anything kind of guy. And it was just, just one of the moments that really stayed with me, that this is somebody that, will always be a joy to be around.
Just a couple of days after Peter and I had this conversation, Daya was in town for a lay transmission ceremony from Tia Strozer, and Kelly came from Spokane to help her out for 4 days. And he's super busy with his spirit pruners business in Spokane. And they had dinner together at Peter's, and they all wrote me about it and said it was great. Yeah, wish I'd been there. That was neat. Oh, yeah, Laura Burgess was at that dinner, too. I think we should give her a call soon. Anyway, look, we can't stop. We need professional help.
Yeah, we got to take a break here, David. We can't go for 3 hours. That's excessive.
No. Okay.
Well, David, my best to you. It's really great fun to catch up, and I'll look forward to continuing. This is great.
Yeah. It's been fun. Yeah, and I've really appreciated being in touch with you, and not just today, but prior days. So, what year were you born?
I'm the same age as you. I was born February 11, 1945.
You were born 2 days after me.
Yeah. So you're older than me.
Yeah, I'm 2 days older than you, and you better keep that in mind. That's very interesting.
Plus, you're from Texas.
Yeah, Fort Worth. Yeah.
Okay, my love to you and everyone.
Yeah, same here. Take care.
Sure. Good night.
Good night.
Good day.
Good day. Thanks a lot, Peter. I appreciate that. May your Dharma continue forever. And this has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Kadrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.